everyone, and welcome to the Ocean Impact Podcast. This is our 12-episode Pitchfest 2021 series where we chat to the people behind the startups making an impact on ocean health. Today, we've got finalists Jordy and Julia Kay from Great Wrap. I'll be your host, Amelia Helt, and as usual, I'm joined by the man himself, Tim Silverwood. How you going, Tim?
Going great, Amelia, and how nice to sit down with these divine humans, Julia and Jordy, and learning all about their very rapid journey as Ocean Impact founders.
It's just incredible. First of all, they seem like the loveliest people. I think people are going to really enjoy this podcast. All of our finalists are lovely people, but I think this was fascinating because they're very relatable and everyone will know what I mean when they listen.
That's it. And, they really are they are the example that I love to hold up. Between them and Sam Elsom from Sea Forest, I'm like, the Australian Ocean Impact startup scene is rich and raging when you see the success of these two startups and the people behind them, because in both cases, there's this sort of sense that, something bigger is compelling them to go and embark upon this journey. They don't need to go and find a compostable solution to cling film, but time dictates that we can't keep using petroleum to go and create this stuff to wrap around pallets and cover your food and pop it in the fridge. We need to be thinking with the circular economy. We need to be thinking with the planet and the ocean at the front of mind. And these two took it upon themselves to be the change. And I love people like that.
It's so inspiring. It does pump you up, I think. And again, it's a nod to Australian innovation. I mean, for everyone following along, Great Wrap is a home compostable cling wrap that they make by diverting food waste from landfill and converting it into the main ingredient. Their current product line has options for home, so you can replace your regular cling wrap, for catering, and also for pallets in the form of pallet caps, and coming very soon, pallet wrap. I think you can pre-order that on their website. Ultimately, it's a far more circular model that they're continuously improving on, which is, as you said, they don't have to do this, but they are, and more to the point that they're improving very rapidly from when they were finalists in Pitchfest to now. What an incredible journey.
That's it. And remembering as well that it takes a lot to build a startup and to get it resourced. And in the case of these guys, huge infrastructure and machinery and factory costs to produce and scale this kind of endeavor. And so they're getting really well supported from the Australian impact investment community, people that really do care about leaving a positive legacy whilst raising and increasing their funds. So I just think this is, again, really indicative of what gets us so excited at OAO about the role of Australia in the global ocean innovation space.
Exactly. And I think, drawing on a common thread from a lot of these interviews for me, Julia is a former architect, Jordy is a former winemaker, and, it's common that a lot of these people have a totally different background than the startup journey they're currently on. But I've always believed that, knowledge you gain in one area is usually transferable to lots of other areas. So you take Julia, she's looking at the process it takes for materials to arrive for an architectural project, and then the waste that is resulting afterward, and being told by her peers that, it's part and parcel of it, and that's just part of the industry and part of the process. Or you look at Jordy, who was a biodynamic winemaker, and looking at from the farming of the grapes to turning that into a product, how good it can be to work with nature. So then, they ended up with the brainchild that is Great Wrap, being highly creative people, looking at how you pick a problem, for them that was pallet wrap. How do we solve this? And they did. To go from where they were in their journeys to where they are now seems like a leap, but it really isn't.
Yeah, probably a really good opportunity in this context for this episode, because I think this is going to be one that will get a lot of listens, and it will stimulate a lot of people to think, oh, well, is it my time to jump out of my existing career and be a Ocean Impact founder? And I've had some really interesting conversations recently about this, even in the context of the climate crisis. We don't need everyone leaving their job to go and try and be a founder, because there isn't for everyone. So first and foremost, think about what you can do in your current industry to make improvements, and how you can upskill yourself so that you can start to make little incremental improvements on the side, because you don't want to go leaving your job. Not everyone gets a successful run at this like Julia and Jordy have done. So just keep that in mind. And remember that OIO offers a really exciting program coming up soon called the Ocean Impact Ideation Program. This is if you think you want to be a founder like Julia or Jordy, but you don't really have the knowledge or the skills to be one. Do the 6-week ideation program and just learn the basics of what it takes to be a founder or to join a team. A much better thing than just downing tools and going and starting a business, because they're not always successful.
Yeah, we're definitely not encouraging everyone to quit their jobs, but yeah, you're exactly right, Tim. After people listen to this episode, I know that they're going to be so pumped and inspired and driven to take action. And the ideation program is kind of the perfect starting point if you're not sure and you want to get a little bit more knowledge behind you and under your belt. So I hope you enjoy this. I know you will. I'm really looking forward to seeing the comments and reviews on your takeaways from this episode. Tim, any final words from you?
Yeah, just really keen to hear your feedback. Share this one around, and this can be the start of many great things for Australia's ocean impact innovation community. Well, I'm incredibly excited to have on the Ocean Impact podcast Pitchfest 21 series Julia and Jordy Kay, the founders of Great Wrap. How are you guys?
Great. Thanks for having us, Tim. Very excited.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Look, you guys do a really good job of telling the story. You know, your website goes through a bit of detail about the reasons behind Great Wrap, the work you're doing, your respective histories. But let's hear it straight from your mouths. We would love to initially start with learning about the problem that it is that you're trying to solve with Great Wrap. You know, how big is it, and why is your solution better than other solutions that are out there?
Good question.
Sure. I mean, so I guess, at large, we are trying to tackle the single-use plastic problem. We were really frustrated in our respective industries, obviously, by the huge amounts of waste. And we decided we needed to probably pick one product that we could sort of, really get our teeth into and kind of solve. And we actually came across pallet wrap, which to a lot of people, they go, oh, what's the deal with that? That's so random. But we actually saw it as this huge opportunity. I mean, pretty much everything around us at the moment, like, my laptop, my phone, Jordy's glasses, was probably wrapped on a pallet at some point for transport. So there's a huge amount of this wrap that exists, but it's kind of in the background. Australia puts like 150,000 tons of pallet wrap into landfill each year. So we were like, okay, if we can solve that, then we're already having a huge impact. So that's how it all started, really, with the problem. I mean, obviously there's problems outside of pallet wrap, but we just saw a huge opportunity to just reinvent the material it was made of. I think we know that there's a lot of problems with recycling, even though everyone's intentions are good. I mean, as a statistic, it's not really looking that healthy for recycling. So we were like, a compostable alternative would really solve this problem, so that we can sort of, have that impact.
We'll have to go into your histories and careers in a moment, but just want to dive a little bit deeper. So, you've looked at an item that is made traditionally out of a petroleum feedstock. You've seen the vast quantities and diverse applications it's being used, and said, hang on, there's a circular solution around this. This stuff needs to be compostable. Is that kind of as simple as identifying the problem and developing a solution as it was?
Yeah, not really. But no, I think, for us, we knew the feedstock couldn't be petroleum when we were tackling this problem. We knew it needed to be something that could break down. I think, every piece of plastic that was ever made in history still exists today. And we're still producing about 1 million tons of petroleum-based plastic every day that will never disappear. So needed to change. We also knew that food waste is the third largest greenhouse gas emitter on the planet. So it's the largest, if it were a country, the largest greenhouse gas emitters would be China, and then the US, and then and food waste would come in third. So it's an enormous problem and a great opportunity. So yeah, we kind of knew that those were the kind of problems we wanted to solve. There's a lot of research that had been done, but we found it hard to find anything that was sort of commercialized. And that was something that we were really sort of excited to work in that space, and began working with Australia's largest university, which is Monash, back in 2020. And, have since sort of developed some pretty exciting technology with them.
So good. Well, you've got a big fan of the circular economy over here as your podcast host today. And, the big messages that have been coming out of leaders in that space for a long time is just that simple hypothesis that unless we replace petroleum feedstocks with naturally occurring, ideally waste additives, then we're not going to achieve this circular economy. So we'll dive a little bit more maybe into the technology in a moment. But let's go back a little bit to your respective careers, because this is fascinating, and you touched on that you both had interactions with diabolical levels of waste. Jordy as a winemaker and Julia as an architect. Maybe just give us a little bit of a snapshot of why you both felt so strongly about solving this problem and how that relates back to your existing careers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm happy to talk about my career first. So, I mean, as you mentioned, my background was in architecture. So, prior to Great Wrap, I had a really, really exciting career. I was building everything from sort of art galleries to education buildings, locally and overseas, for quite a big sort of architecture practice. The thing that stood out for me the most, I mean, I was obviously obsessed with the materials I was building buildings out of. I mean, that's your most immediate touch point with the built environment is what it's made out of. So you're spending immense amounts of time there. And then, I guess you get out on site and you see all of these materials that you've chosen to sort of, build with, and they're wrapped in pallet wrap, and there's just huge amounts of waste on site. I mean, we've all seen big skip bins full of just construction waste. I think it's like one of the largest industries for waste. So I mean, I was, I guess, really frustrated by that. I saw a heap of opportunity, and quite frankly, like, I saw a lot of amazing minds just being fine with this amount of waste and kind of accepting it as part of the process. And I was like, actually, this isn't fine, and I don't want to keep doing this. Like, I want to start to make a difference. And I thought maybe it would be a building material, but we both spoke about pallet wrap, and I'll let you probably talk about your background there. And it's pretty exciting.
And first of all, sorry about the background noise. We're in tropical North Queensland for anyone listening, and there's heaps of bird action right now, so probably adds to the depth a little anyway. My background was in wine. I used to make natural wine, so sort of farming with regenerative farming techniques, and through the lens of biodynamic farming, and then made wines without using any sort of chemicals or other additions in the process. And so I guess really, like, going into compostable packaging probably, didn't make a lot of sense at the time, but now it actually does make a lot of sense, because it is very similar, and it's all about using plants to mimic nature, and it's sort of a form of biodesign. And it's been a really easy and natural fit for me. I spend a lot of my time, I guess, on the technical and manufacturing side of the company. We're constantly looking at ways in which we can incorporate waste as different forms of additives, and using kelp, and sort of how we can include that into our manufacturing process and material sort of science side. So I don't know, like, it's something I've always worked on since I was about 15 in terms of working with nature to create things. And I did study very briefly agriculture and chemistry and biology, but wasn't much use for me now. But it is good to tell investors that, to give them a sense of calm.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about that technology. So let's imagine people tuning in today are sort of learning about compostable plastics for the first time. So who's best placed to talk a little bit about the technology and how you've come to ultimately an ingredient mix that is working for the products that you create at the moment?
Yeah, happy to sort of dive in. And I guess, like, first of all, compostable packaging, it's a minefield. Like, it's really confusing. And I think there's different spectrums. So different spectrums of feedstock. So there's certain compostable packaging that can come from quite heavily farmed, sources like cornstarch, that can contain heavy metals, nasty fertilizers, use huge amounts of water and land. So, obviously it can be quite problematic. Then there's, I guess, compostable packaging that does break down in a compost, but only in industrial composting conditions, which are quite high temperatures, and still wouldn't break down necessarily in landfill or your compost at home. And then there's home compostable, which means it can break down in ambient composting temperatures. It would most likely break down relatively quickly in landfill, and it wouldn't emit methane. It would just simply break down into carbon and water. So we sort of focus on the biopolymers or the bioplastics that are in that space that can readily break down in any environment, whether it be the ocean or landfill or your compost at home. And then focus on ones that are made from that sort of waste feedstock. So we focus on potato waste, specifically. Like, we're really interested in the starch. And so, we could look at other forms of starched waste as well. But we're looking at really specific sort of feedstock. So we can't, like, mix all of the different food waste from your food and organic collection service, from your local council. Like, we're working with specific French fry manufacturers and taking the reject French fries. But we could take sort of starch from just about any feedstock. And then, I guess other sort of folks out there in Australia, just as a starting point, are focused on like Ulu in Western Australia, are looking at, you're probably interviewing them for this, or if not, you will in the future, looking at seaweed and kelp. I'm just going to pause for a second as a tipping bin is pulled up right behind us. So now that that garbage truck is gone, and it was collecting green waste, I just checked. So Great Wrap could go into that bin and be composted. And I think this is the cool part about compostable packaging as well, is it's end of life. Is that if that organic waste could become carbon that could go back into a garden, then that could really help combat climate change as well, because it is putting carbon back into our soils, which is a massive carbon sink that is yearning for more carbon. Unlike the atmosphere or the ocean, that has too much carbon, soils really need that carbon matter to sort of combat climate change.
I might just jump in there and add, I know this part's at the end of our chat, but we are looking for a life cycle engineer whose full-time job would be helping us facilitate that process with the end of life of our product. It's something we're really excited about, and I've got a feeling that anyone that is listening to this would be a great fit. So just want to pop that in there.
Yeah, because I guess you identified it is a minefield, this compostable landscape, and the work is still yet to be done, right? I mean, not just in constantly improving material science, but really getting into that end of life. And if you guys are so comfortable talking about it, we do talk a lot about the impacts of leakages of compostable materials into the environment and the ocean, and that can create its own suite of challenges, right? Because what is going to be breaking down in a compost might not be what's going to be breaking down in a waterway or the ocean. Can you kind of speak to that particular challenge for getting into this industry of compostable packaging?
Yeah, I think it's it's trying to find a process that's the most natural in the way that it sort of does break down. Again, different types of biopolymers can be problematic at their end of life. Biopolymers like thermoplastic starch, or TPS, and PHA aren't problematic. They can add huge amounts of value to a compost pile, and they only require bacteria to break down so that they can break down quite easily in the ocean and not cause huge amounts of leakages or toxins being released.
There's also, I mean, like that is an amazing ability that these materials have. But I mean, the biggest piece that's like the most important is obviously this education piece. I mean, like, we don't want to be using huge amounts of plastics and them to be ending up in the ocean. Like, yes, it's great that we've solved what happens if they do, but I mean, it's like a step earlier that is the really hard part, which is a big behavioural shift, I think, as well.
Yeah, and weaning ourselves off this fossil fuel addiction that we've allowed to overtake us for the last 5 or 6 decades.
Totally.
Yeah, and I think too, like in bioplastics and compostable packaging, but just in packaging in general, we need to decrease our consumption, much like we have carbon emission targets. We need to have the same, and it doesn't matter what feedstock or what it's made of and how it breaks down. We simply need to use less packaging and come up with solutions that are better, because ultimately there's still energy that goes into making products like ours, and there's still transport and logistics, and it does solve a great problem in the immediate term, but we still need to focus on solutions that are more reusable or that can curb plastic consumption.
Yeah, I mean, I think like plastic manufacturing was actually up like 20% or something crazy last year. Like it's the demand is on an upward trend. It's not like we're coming up with solutions and it also demand is declining. So it's a bit of a scary situation that we're in, but obviously a lot of amazing businesses working in the space too, which is very exciting.
But that's all the more reason to be so excited about the kind of industry that you're getting into, right? Because I'd like to imagine that we do see radical action on curbing fossil fuel extraction and therefore utilization, but the quantity of fossil fuels that are going into the manufacture of the diverse suite of plastics out there is going to keep driving that demand. So unless we have this pioneering research into using waste feedstocks to become that next generation of materials, we're not going to be able to have a true fossil fuel reduced dependent future.
Yeah, 100%, definitely. And I think too, like the only real challenge here is not that the products work; it's just getting them to a price point that means that the big companies around the world that are going to take this on. And so I think if we were to put as much sort of research and energy into streamlining oil and gas for plastic production, then and if we put that into biopolymers and PHA and TPS and other sort of biopolymers that can solve these problems, then the price would be at parity as well as performance, and it really wouldn't be a big deal or a big switch.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly, like, it's a great point. I think, like, that's the reason plastic is such a big problem, is because it has been so cheap and so accessible for so many years. It's not like humans have gone out to, like, totally decimate our planet. It's just, like, cheap, performs well, so it's really accessible and everyone can use it and make things from it. So definitely, like, accessibility is a big problem for us.
Yeah, and that that's why so important, like the work you're doing that sort of brings together a community, creates a conversation and sort of fosters those startups and linking them with investors, and we need to just see more of that in Australia, because we've been quite good for a relatively small population at leading certain R&D trends, and again, like we're leading that in the sort of biopolymer world at the moment, for our population, but certainly lagging significantly behind what's sort of been happening in Europe in the last sort of 5 years as well.
I'd love to sort of loop back on what we were just discussing there, in the sense that you guys as pioneers, obviously working with institutions like Monash and great people, but the pioneering work that you are doing, and Julia, you mentioned before that if that sort of attitude was being brought into these giant fossil fuel industries to look at how they can diversify and really lead materials research, we'd be getting there so much faster. But it's fallen upon your two slender shoulders, respectively, to go and take this on. I mean, and does that then sort of seed into why I consider you guys as, you know, being really successful in this space right now? You know, you've got the support, you're sort of well funded. People want to see you succeed. Is that because they're saying, well, guys, these guys over there didn't do it. At least these guys are. Is that the sentiment that you guys feel?
Definitely. I definitely feel like we've got a whole team of like people cheering us on from the sidelines, you know, like yourself. It's like everyone sees the problem, they understand the problem, they understand what we're trying to do, and they're just like, go for it. Like, I think it's super motivating, and it's really fun, like, to be doing that work. Like it's so like, if ever you needed more motivation to get up and like do your job, it's like no one else is doing this. Like we have to do this, I think. Don't you reckon?
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's been quite flattering to see a cling wrap company do so well. We're lucky to have constant media attention and inbound traffic from massive companies and inbound traffic from investors. All we're doing is making stretch wrap. I mean, it's super encouraging. And then when you see like our commercial factory, which we're just about to commission, it's an enormous scale and be one of the largest plastic extrusion factories in the Southern Hemisphere. And I don't know, 3 years ago, it was just a kooky idea. Like, there's not many, I guess, petroleum plastic companies that can grow that sort of fast and have that much support because public sentiment is so strong.
Exactly. And it's like a really like, we feel really optimistic about the future of the planet because we have seen this support, and it's like it's demand from consumers asking for these products. It's not like we're trying to force alternatives down people's throats. So it's really very optimistic from where we're sitting, I think, which is really nice.
Yeah, and obviously it just sits so firmly in the OIO wheelhouse in the sense that, of course, we have a global mandate to support and accelerate startups doing great things to help improve ocean health. But, of course, we want to see Australia as a centrepiece in that equation because, like you identified, Jordy, we have got a legacy of great R&D and fantastic institutions. So why not turn that into commercial opportunities? And maybe there's a future where Australia doesn't have to just keep digging up our turf and selling it to the highest bidder. We can actually export leading technologies and solutions like Great Wrap.
That'd be very nice.
It's a nice,
nice future.
It's a nice idea. Feels a bit romantic at the moment.
Indeed. All right, let's go a little bit into the journey, which it appears quite short. Obviously, you've got your careers that led you into these moments of developing Great Wrap, but some of the key achievements in that time, and a question that a lot of the people listening to this series particularly love is learning about some of those key challenges as ways to help people on their respective journeys.
I think, we could bore you and talk about the whole journey, but I think probably the most momentous decision in Great Wrap history for us was probably that moment. I mean, obviously we launched with a direct-to-consumer product that we'd had manufactured overseas, and, that allowed us to start talking with our consumers. It started, hearing people's feedback on what we were trying to do. And that was really critical. And the biggest thing that was loud and clear was people saying, why is this not made here in Australia? So that was what prompted the decision for us to, set up our own manufacturing facility and define kind of the rest of the journey to date. I think that was a really, really big shift. And that was driven again based on the sentiment, which was really really cool. I mean, so now we have 2 factories. We're as Jordy said, 6 weeks away from sort of being the largest manufacturer of stretch wrap, which we just could have never possibly imagined at the start of the journey, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think in short, we launched with a prototype. As Julia said, we listened to customers, set up that first pilot factory. We raised a small amount of investment, got some government funding as well, and then really proved out the concept, built a team, and now have launched, or about to launch, this 11,000 square meter factory, and it's like, I don't know, like each problem, like some seem so small and not insignificant, but seems relatively small compared to the problems that you might face now. And like, I remember when we brought on our first team member and they gave me their tax file number and superannuation number, and I was just like, what the hell? What do I do with this? Like, how do I do a pay run? Like, like just, and then you're really freaking out and you're like trying to call a friend from high school that went on to become an accountant, and then they kind of help you out, and you sort of, there's just like all these little like really basic things that you kind of learn that it feels like just such a massive challenge
Oh my gosh,
for that day. And then it's like, it gets much bigger, and you realize you undershot how much power you're going to be consuming by 1,000 amps, and you need to build a $50,000 switchboard to power your machinery. And I don't know, like there's just like all these massive problems, like, but they feel equally as challenging. So yeah, it's just been quite a funny sort of I guess sort of like journey in that regard. And since then we've now gone through 3 investment rounds. We've received much larger government support and grants, which obviously incredibly grateful for. And we now have someone that manages that pay run internally, which is quite an achievement.
It is. It's also, I mean, the great thing about bringing on investors is we've been really lucky in the fact that we've been able to attract really impact-driven investors. So then they become, your mentors and your network, and you can give them a ring and say, hey, have you come across this? Because it's really stressing us out. And that's been so instrumental for our growth. I mean, we couldn't have really done it without that sort of support network around us, I don't think.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I think having aligned people in your corner with the capacity and time to help you navigate those challenges sounds like that was worth their weight in gold. I'd love to go a little bit into sort of where you are at now, and a little bit about sort of where you're planning on taking the business in the next sort of 12 to 24 months. If you wouldn't mind giving us a bit of a glimpse on that, please.
Sure. I mean, probably, I guess we see a really, really big and bold future for Great Wrap. I mean, the dream is to be manufacturing sort of on each continent from local waste and serving all of those global markets. So I guess what we're doing about that in the immediate future is we're going through a bit of like, I guess, a brand evolution at the moment, which is sort of about maturing the way we speak to our audience and really building that trust and quality in our product that we want to sort of be able to communicate with. So we're doing that. We're launching this factory, and we're also preparing for a launch in the US in August, which is very, very exciting. So we're just really wanting to start that sort of conversation on a global level. We've learnt a lot from our Australian audience, and now we're really excited to share that. The team is growing pretty rapidly. We're launching pallet wrap, which is super exciting, from our Tullamarine facility. Just so much.
Yeah, I think for me, like the most exciting thing is the technology's improved a lot more. So the quality of equipment we now have that we've been able to get finance through a bank for is amazing. So we were kind of essentially working with a system we built from stuff we bought on Alibaba to now using the most highest sort of quality equipment available. And I don't know, it's been pretty exciting for me to sort of work really closely with the manufacturing engineering team and the R&D team. So now we can, very shortly stand behind a product that, does literally look and feel exactly the same as petroleum plastic. And that was always the goal. Like, we're just such a customer-centric business. Like, we solved this problem as customers with a frustration. We didn't sort of start a food waste startup. And like, that wasn't the reason why we started Great Wrap. We started it because there was this really annoying problem called with pallet wrap, and no one was doing anything about it. And so now finally it's like we've kind of reached this really exciting point that we've been working towards for 3 and a bit years now. And yeah, as Julie said, like it's the really fun part where we get to scale that up globally, and we're like working with some of Australia's and the world's largest retailers, manufacturers, supermarkets, transport companies. We're fully engaged in conversations with them, and we're launching Pallet Wrap in September, and are so excited to finally roll this out with all these big companies.
Yeah, it's very much like go time. I think, it feels as though, I mean, obviously Great Wrap is our baby. We don't have children, but, it's very much like at the time when the baby's learnt how to walk, and it's at its first running race. I feel like I would describe the phase we're at right now like that, for sure.
And I feel like, like every founder you speak to, regardless of how progressed they are in their company, they're always apologetic for like the product or the like website or whatever it is that they're doing. And I feel like now we can become a lot less apologetic.
We hope, in theory.
Just for like how our product's made and the systems and the technology and the brand and just all of these things that we've been trying to fix for so long are finally working.
No need to apologise. I'm sure your community has been supportive even through the ups and downs. You mentioned obviously the global expansion, which is super exciting. Is Wrap the future of Great Wrap, or is there more that you have up on your mood board about the potential of the business to diversify? I mean, obviously there's a huge demand and need for Wrap, but is there anything else that you're going to reveal to us?
We can, as Great Wrap as a company, can have the most impact through scaling as a stretch wrap company. So like for us to kind of add some new product lines on at the moment would hold back the growth of stretch wrap, just being because of what finances we can access through banks and sort of waste sources, and there's a lot of reasons why we just want to become the world's largest stretch wrap company very, very quickly. But we're definitely working on what's next after that, and how it could sort of feed into Great Wrap or align very strongly with it. But yeah, I think for the next sort of like 3 years, it's just a hell of a lot of stretch wrap. But we're definitely thinking about what comes in the next 5 to 10 years as well. And look, I mean, it's obviously going to be in solving the problems in plastics.
I mean, like, yeah. I think probably, important to know that the technology that we and the team have worked so hard on developing isn't specific to stretch wrap, and it has sort of like a vast array of applications, which is really exciting for us. But as Jordy said, I mean, we've learnt in this journey that when you try and do too many things at once, you can, the wheels fall off a little bit. So we're trying to really refine one process before we branch out.
That's really great advice. Speaking of advice, we're going to spend a little bit of time now on this question, which I think founders and prospective entrepreneurs really love, which is around, your key learnings. So, 1 or 2 key learnings from each of you on your journey as founders would be really helpful.
Yeah. Would you like to go first? Or?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I just sort of pretty much already said it, which is always focus on your customers first. Build a business for what people actually want and need, not what you think they want and need. So don't make assumptions. Have as many conversations and engage with as many customers as possible. You could have this really cool, novel product or solution, but whether people will actually pay for that or whether it actually does solve a problem and is truly scalable is a whole another sort of question. And I've found like when we've made mistakes as a team is when we've put kind of our own interests first rather than really trying to focus on that customer first. It's just like so important is to never lose sight of what the customer wants and needs. And obviously, think of Mother Nature as a customer too.
Yeah, I'd probably add to that. So for your reference, I spend a lot of time with my ear to the customer directly. So if you're doing that as a founder, it can be quite hard sometimes. And I think it's important just to make sure that you be kind to yourself. Like if you're trying to do a good thing and you get upset when people don't agree with what you're doing, that's okay. It means you're doing something that you really should be doing and you're passionate about it. But it is important to make that space to go, no, like what's the big picture here? This is one person's opinion, like really, because it can be hard. I also think really important piece of advice, as well as listening to customers, I think listening to your team as well. I think one thing that we do pretty well, and hopefully our team would agree, is collaborate. We really, really, really try and get everyone's opinion on the way we're doing things, and that so many amazing ideas and strategies have come out of that. And I think if Jordy and I were just trying to make all the decisions, we would have made a lot more mistakes than we have if we hadn't been listening, I think.
Oh, fantastic. Really love that, guys. All right. Well, you sort of mentioned before that there is future hires on the draw, on the cards. So let's talk a little bit maybe about areas that you do need help. Maybe you want to touch on some things that you haven't had a chance to speak to today yet that you thought you were going to talk about on the podcast. We might just sort of move towards wrapping up this fantastic chat.
Perfect. Yes. So, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, we are launching in the US. So we do have a lot of opportunities coming up within our sort of growth and marketing teams. So if, sharing stories around a better planet is something you're really into, definitely keep an eye on the Great Wrap LinkedIn page and our socials. We also have some new products launching in the next month or so, which is very exciting. So I don't want to give too much away, but just stay tuned.
Anything else that you really wanted to speak to today? And I guess we just sort of always wind up the podcast with a chance for people to know where they can follow the journey and obviously support you guys.
Yeah, look, I think obviously, head to our website, head to us on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. And TikTok, which I still am like so far behind. I'm like the dorky dad, but
yes, we have TikTok.
We do have a TikTok. We have a TikTok account. No, but I think too, like if there are other founders listening, or if you're thinking about a new idea and you're a little lost, or just want to have a quick chat. Feel free to send us an email. Julia and I are always happy to help out. Like we've made a crap load of mistakes, and not to say our advice is great, but we're happy to be there as support for anyone that's sort of trying to solve a problem that does have a positive impact on the environment. We want to be there to help out as much as we can.
Definitely, and happy to share our network as well. If we can't answer those questions because we haven't solved all of the problems yet, there's usually someone we can recommend you talk to. So definitely.
Well, thank you so much. I've absolutely loved getting to know you both over the last little while, and I'm just so thoroughly excited about your future, and I'm sure all our community are. So keep up the brilliant work. We know you will.
Oh, thanks, Tim. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Can't take the ocean out of